Hello and welcome to the India Foundation. As you know, the BRICS summit in Russia in Kazan concluded in October. What exactly happened over there? Which way is the BRICS headed? To discuss this and more, I have a very special guest with me today, Ambassador D.B. Venkatesh Varma, who is currently Distinguished Fellow, Vivekananda Foundation, and he is former ambassador to Russia. Welcome, Ambassador Varma, to the show.
Thank you.
Ambassador Varma, the first question is, of course, now the leaders of BRICS met in Kazan in October 2024 for the 16th BRICS summit. Now, what were India's key priorities there and contributions at that particular summit and overall? And what specific goals did India achieve in BRICS in this particular summit?
Well, thank you for putting me on your program. As you know, Prime Minister Modi represented India at the 16th BRICS summit. It was held in Kazan, Russia. The host was President Putin. India has been a founding member of BRICS, but BRICS has evolved over a period of time. In the last summit, it was expanded. More countries came on board. Egypt, Ethiopia, Saudi Arabia, which is yet to join, but it has been admitted, Iran. And there are at least 13 countries who have been asked to join as partner countries. So, there's a great interest in BRICS. BRICS began as a platform for discussing international economic issues, but given the very troubled world, I think politics and security issues are, of course, intruding onto this largely economic agenda. I think Prime Minister's approach representing India was extremely well received. It focused on moderating political and security conflict, focusing on the economic agenda, which was the original mandate of BRICS, but at the same time taking it forward in a people-centric way, and secondly, to give voice to the global south. As you are aware, when we were hosting the G20 summit last year, Prime Minister took the initiative of organizing 3 virtual summits of the global south. It's called the Voice of the Global South, to ascertain the views and the pulse in the global south on issues that are of concern to them. And India has taken forward these issues into the BRICS. Of course, the economic agenda involves also stabilizing the international economic and trade systems, the financial systems which are under great stress because of the sanctions regime that has been put by the West on Russia. There is a trend towards de-dollarization, but also the new development bank was which was established some time ago. Now, we want to take that forward. Prime Minister put forward the issue of the BRICS should reflect on global south issues, number one. The new development bank should also relate to those requirements. There has been a proposal for involving the new development bank in the gift city in Gujarat, which is coming up in a very major way. Prime Minister also put forward India's priorities on the BRICS startup initiative, which is to bring forward young entrepreneurs especially in the technology level, to come together to contribute to the BRICS agenda. In addition, I think India has always put forward our proposals for the common global good. We've done it in the G20, we've taken it up in the United Nations. This involves the International Solar Alliance. This involves the initiative to protect critical infrastructure. Prime Minister's initiative for lifestyle for handling the climate change and environment issues. There have been a number of initiatives that were taken forward. I think India has a leadership role. India has also a role for balancing extremes or extremities in the BRICS. There are dimensions that come forward from different sides. I think India's role was appreciated, and I think this will be taken forward in the next summit, which will be held in Brasilia next year. So on the whole, I think India's participation and PM's participation in the BRICS summit has been a success.
Yeah, but no summit is also without its challenges. What were the challenges that India faced? And what are the India's opportunities in terms of strategic interests? How can India navigate the challenges that have come its way and ensure that India's interests are also served as well as the BRICS interests are also served?
Absolutely. I think, it's no secret we live in a very troubled world. There is a shift towards multipolarity. It's a very sort of uneven shift. In some respects, the world is still unipolar because the dollar, for instance, still dominates the international system. But in terms of manufacturing, I think China has emerged as a big manufacturing power. There is also an upsurge of subaltern quest for multipolarity from regional notables from Southeast Asia, from the Middle East, from Africa, from Latin America. So this shift towards multipolarity, it is India's view, should be taken forward in a negotiated and in a way that will benefit humanity. So India definitely sees BRICS as a platform for promoting stable and organized multipolarity. Sometimes this is interpreted as being anti-West. Of course, there are different views in BRICS. Like there is a quest for multipolarity in the larger world, we are also looking for multipolarity in Asia. There are in fact multipolar tendencies within BRICS. So while, say for instance, China or Russia may have a very strong anti-Western agenda, that is not necessarily shared by other members of BRICS. BRICS also has very large number of countries which are very influential in energy issues, in production of grain. India and China are great consumers of energy resources. Russia and Saudi Arabia and Iran and others and UAE are great producers of energy. I think this is also a platform for dialogue between energy producers and energy consumers. More than that, I think we also want to take forward the reform of international institutions, be it the United Nations Security Council, be it the IMF, the World Bank, multilateral lending institutions. We want to take it forward in a manner that benefits not only BRICS countries, but also it also benefits the larger international community. So if you see India's approach, the same issues that we push forward in the G20, what we push forward for promotion of the sustainable development goals at the United Nations, those are also some things that we take forward in BRICS. India is neither anti-West nor pro-West. I think India is pro-India. I think India is also gaining stature for putting forward issues that are of interest to the global South. I think to say that BRICS is dominated by China is an exaggeration. There are other views as well, and a lot of countries within BRICS and outside BRICS, in fact, welcome India's active role in a sense not only to balance the West, but also to balance China. So on the whole, I think BRICS is an evolving mechanism, a platform for multipolarity, a platform for reform of international institutions, and in each one of these agenda items, I think India's role is not only appreciated but welcomed.
Yeah, in this context, if I can ask a quick question about the BRICS currency, because you talked about China and Russia, and we know that they have been pushing for a BRICS currency. What exactly is India's stand on it, and what future do you think, if there is a BRICS currency at all?
You see, BRICS currency has been talked about. It's more in the realm of speculation rather than specific proposals. What BRICS is definitely looking at in terms of increasing the use of national currencies in bilateral trading arrangements or multilateral trading arrangements. Now, the use of national currencies has been spurred by the fact that there has been a securitization of global interdependence because of the sanctions issues and things like that. So, each country within BRICS has drawn its own lesson. There is, I think, a common interest in reforming the international financial system to make it more resilient, to have more resilient supply chains. But I think my view, which is I think also widely shared within the expert community looking at BRICS, a BRICS currency is a bridge too far. It will not happen in the near future. The market conditions for a BRICS currency are just not there. But what is possible and what the BRICS is planning to do or hoping to do is to create a basket of currencies which can become a reference point for international financial transactions. This is not to replace the dollar. This, I think, is a supplement to the dollar. If you look at the international system today, more than 50% of international transactions take place in the dollar. More than 20% take place in the euro. Chinese renminbi is just 5%. Though there is between Russia and China, there has been an expansion of this. So, the alternatives to the dollar are definitely not on the horizon. But what is definitely being looked at by BRICS, and this is something that India also shares, is to see how we can make the international financial system more resilient. And if pathways towards greater use of national currencies is taken forward, greater use of digital public infrastructure is taken care of. I mean, India has taken the initiative of making available our UPI system to countries which are interested, and more countries are interested in this. So, I think reform will have to take place not in isolation. Reform has to take place with BRICS, with the G7, with countries which are there in the OECD. But the OECD, I think the West has also got to realize that using weaponization of global interdependence will also have a certain backlash. But the backlash should not be so extreme that we dismantle what we have as the global international system, which will definitely not be in India's interest.
Ambassador, you have been India's envoy to Russia. When you are looking at it, BRICS in the context of India-Russia relationship, as well as the fact that Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, they have a very good, interpersonal relationship. How is this helping BRICS to move ahead? How, I would say, and there is a lot of adverse views that come from the West. How is India navigating it? What exactly is the future in terms of India-Russia relationship as well? If you can shed some light on that.
Yes, that's an excellent question. As you are aware, before Prime Minister went for the Kazan summit in BRICS, he had in fact had a bilateral summit with President Putin earlier in summer in Moscow. President Putin and Prime Minister Modi have met more than 30 times. They are amongst the senior most world leaders today in terms of how much public political office experience they have. They have been leaders of their countries for considerable period of time, and they personally enjoy an extremely good rapport. And in these very troubled times, personal relations between world leaders, I think, is vitally important, especially when there is a generational change happening in the West, when so many leaders who, like Chancellor Merkel, who was there for a very long time, has moved on, and we're getting a new crop of leadership with the election of President Trump in the US. The personal relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, of course, is an anchor for the India-Russia relationship. The India-Russia relationship is a relationship of a strategic partnership. India and Russia have enjoyed this for over 70 years, but it has been renewed periodically. And I think Prime Minister's visit in July added to the substantive amount of renewal that has taken place, which is to add new drivers, especially in terms of energy security. India and Russia see each other as energy security partners. One is a very major supplier, one is a very major consumer. And I think these last 3 years have shown that India and Russia can participate and collaborate in a manner which is not only mutually beneficial, but actually helps stabilize global energy prices and markets, which I think has been a huge contribution to the stabilization of the international economic system. We intend to take that forward. There are also ways of expanding bilateral trade, connectivity issues, the North-South corridor, the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor. India is an old partner in the field of defense, so we want to renew that relationship. Now, it is well known internationally that India-Russia relationship is vital for India. It is not just a legacy relationship, but it is a relationship which goes into the future. I think that has been accepted to an extent by the United States. We have excellent relations with the United States. We have a strategic partnership with the United States. And the US has recognized that there is a certain irreducible minimum in the India-Russia relationship, which India will not forego. And that is definitely our intention. So, one of the great successes of our diplomacy in the last couple of years is the fact that we have been able to navigate this very troubled pathway in the international system, where there is a lot of conflict between the big powers, between the United States and Russia over Ukraine. There is also conflict between US and China that is quite evident. We have taken forward our relations where the relationship with the other countries is not allowed to impact on. The reason why we have succeeded also is because the increased stature and capabilities of India in the international system. India is important in very different ways to various different countries in different sort of ways, but the totality means that they all expect India to play an active role. There is no exclusivity in our big power relations, and we intend to take forward both our relations with Russia as well as our relationship with the United States going forward. As you were aware, during the Kazan summit, one of the important meetings was meeting between President Xi Jinping of China and our Prime Minister Modi, which has actually opened up the pathway for a certain amount of re-engagement between India and China. Our National Security Advisor, Mr. Doval, was there in Beijing recently, and I think very important and very positive steps have been taken. These may be limited in scope, but I think the impact is to remove some of the tensions that have been building up in the India-China relationship. However, the India-China relationship has many dimensions. It is not just the border problem that we have, which is a very important problem, but I think there is the larger economic relationship. There is the growth of China, its assertiveness in our neighborhood, in the South China Sea, in the larger Eurasian continent. It is clear that India will stand its ground. We are not one to take pressure lightly. But going forward, I think if there is dialogue and discussion and there is a mutual accommodation of interests, this is something that we would definitely insist on. Certain stability in our relationship with China can also be expected. So, if we have a certain amount of stability in our relationship with China, we have excellent relationship with the United States. We have a long-standing relationship with Russia. This adds to India's credibility and stature in the international system. That even at a time when we have this great world turbulence in the international system, India is able to maintain in each of these tracks a certain modicum of relationship and a great momentum of relationship in other tracks.
Yeah, so in fact that this leads up to perhaps a detailed question on China specifically. When you are looking at India and China, I mean, as we know, there are border problems, there are other problems as well. Would you say this summit and the meeting that you spoke about has injected a modicum of trust in the relationship? Can we trust the Chinese? Which way are India-China relations headed?
Well, trust is always a byproduct. It is never the driver of any relationship, but definitely not with China. I think Prime Minister's meeting with President Xi was useful in the sense that the Chinese have understood very clearly that while India will protect its interests very firmly, it is also open for dialogue to see how outstanding issues can be resolved through discussions and diplomacy, which has always been the case. This trend was disrupted not by India, it was disrupted by China, where a unilateral assertion of rights through the use of force was met with a firm resistance from our side. And that is not the path we wish to go down. But if the Chinese realization is there that they wish to see India as a partner, and step by step normalization of our relationship, the border problems remains critical. India and China can do a lot in Asia as long as there is mutual accommodation of interests, both in Asia, in the Indo-Pacific, and in global affairs. Having said that, I think we also need to take into account that there is a big power differential between India and China. Our economic growth will enable us as we move forward. India is one of the fastest growing economies amongst the major economies of the world. I think we need to spend more on defense. We also need to strengthen our international partnerships, including with Russia, including with the United States, with Quad, for instance. Our connectivity projects, IMEC going westward, the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor going eastwards, the international north-south corridor going through Iran into Eurasia. All this along with India's growth as a major economic and technological power. The economic fundamentals of India are good. We need to pick up the pace of our growth. We have all the factors in, but I think in the next 10 years, if we are able to assure growth between 7 to 9%, I think we can look forward to a restabilization of the India-China relationship on a long-term basis. So I am actually fairly confident that this positive turn that we have taken place, it's a limited turn of tactical significance, but that can be converted to strategic gains for India going forward in the next 10 years.
Okay. Now, which brings us to the last question, and of course, the biggest world power currently, the United States. Donald Trump is coming in. This is the Trump second term. Mr. Modi is here. How do you think India-US relations will develop in the second term of Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi's third term, of course? And what are the challenges and opportunities in that? Because we are hearing a lot of sound bites coming in from Mr. Trump. How do you think the relationship will develop, and will there be any differences in terms of the relationship that India has had during Mr. Biden's term?
So there are 2 points to consider. I think President Trump is coming to office for the second time with a very specific domestic agenda. He's been very clear about it. His supporters have been very clear about it. And I think there is every expectation that he will pursue that agenda, which is an America First agenda. He wants to resurrect the American economy, American defense, cut down on the bureaucracy within the United States, cut down on illegal immigration, look forward to strengthening America's role in the world by cutting down America's engagement in various wars. And his first priority, I think, is, as he has said, he wants to see a quick return to peace in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which I think for us is a very positive objective. And if that were to happen sooner rather than later, it is something that we would welcome definitely. It brings back peace to Europe. It also starts bringing back Russia into the international system. And it also reduces the burden that the Russia-US conflict has started imposing in our relationship both with Russia and with the United States. So that's a positive thing for President Trump also has very strong views on tariffs as a method of going forward with dealing with international trade issues. We are fortunate in a sense that we have a very strong foundation for the India-US relationship that is there in Congress. It's a bipartisan support. It is there in both the political parties. And the great advantage that we have is that President Trump has had an extremely good impression about India during his first term. Of course, we cannot expect the second term only to be a automatic continuation of the first term, but his relationship with Prime Minister Modi, his awareness of various issues with India, I think give us an advantage that many other countries in a sense do not have. That said, of course, President Trump comes to power at a time when there is considerable domestic change within the United States, and we have to see how that plays out. And it also takes place against the background of great international turbulence. So, while we have every reason to be confident, we should not take this for granted. I think the relationship is on very solid foundations, but the relationship needs to be nurtured and taken forward through productive engagement. The United States is absolutely critical for us in two respects. I would say in terms of technology, the United States is truly a global power, a superpower in terms of technology. I mean, all this AI revolution and semiconductors and biotechnology, you name it, and space technology. And if there is one criteria for India, which is absolutely critical for our own growth, it is technology. So, a partnership with the United States, in fact, a technology alliance with the United States is something that India desperately requires, and we should do everything in our power to promote. The second area is energy. The United States is not a direct supplier for energy, a major supplier for energy for India, but the United States is now one of the biggest, most powerful factors driving the global energy markets, because it itself is a huge energy producer and an exporter. And going forward, I think we would like to work with the United States to see how this entire energy structure, not just in fossil fuels, but also in climate change, in green technology, green finance, and this whole entire thing taken forward. The third I would mention is defense. I think there are certain, especially since warfare is changing so much, we can greatly benefit from the partnership we have with the United States. And the last, of course, is the great community to community relationship that we have built. It is one of the great pillars of our relationship between India and the United States, and we've seen how they've made a contribution in the past, and going forward these contributions will only increase. So, I am fairly optimistic about the India-US relationship, and President Trump, I think, has fairly imaginative ideas, for example, on solving the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and he is definitely the United States is an overextended superpower. It's in our interest that the United States becomes a more focused global power, and that is precisely what President Trump wants to do. And many of his appointments in his administration, I think along the lines that I've just mentioned. So, I'm fairly positive and optimistic about the relationship between India and the United States.
And so, overall you are optimistic about the BRICS, which is on the right path, of course, as you mentioned. And it's good to hear from you that, I mean, India's relationship with Russia, China and the US are on the right track. Thank you, Ambassador, on behalf of India Foundation, for being on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much.